Well, thank you so much for all of you for joining in this panel discussion about artificial intelligence applied to legislative activities. I am advised that this panel is going to be conducted in English, but with simultaneous interpretation to Spanish and also simultaneous interpretation to Portuguese. I have the honor to be your moderator today. I will introduce all of you, then I will pose a series of questions to all of you. Each one of you will have 3 minutes to reply to this question, and I will open to all the other colleagues to share their comments as well on this first response for the time of 3 minutes. I kindly ask you to follow this time since we are a lot of colleagues in this panel, so we can be mindful about our time today. We have the pleasure of welcoming Ari Hershowitz from Xcential Legislative Technologies here today, representing the private sector. We have also Fotios Fitsilis from the Hellenic Parliament and the Hellenic OCR team. We also have Francisco Edmundo Andrade from the Câmara dos Deputados of Brazil, Tarasewiez from Câmara de Deputados de la Nación Argentina, and Ludovic Delepiné from the European Parliament. Without further ado, I'd like to go to my first question, and Germain, that goes for you. Parliaments can use artificial intelligence or different technologies that could be called today as artificial intelligence. I'm trying to get away from the hype of saying that everything can be solved with AI. But parliaments, they can use this group of technologies to effectively enhance the legislative process and other legislative activities, such as the oversight of public policy implementation, for example. My first question to open today's debate is about the applications being used by parliaments. What are the different AI technologies being used by legislatures today, and how do they impact legislative activities on the ground, not on the dimension of ideas, on how they could impact, but how do they impact today?
Bueno, muchas gracias, Luis. Gran panel, a muchos les veo caras conocidas, hemos compartido algunos desarrollos de inteligencia artificial. Básicamente nosotros desde la Argentina y en consonancia con la pregunta, estamos dando los primeros pasos de incorporar la inteligencia artificial adentro del Parlamento. Esa fue una de las primeras premisas que nos propusimos dentro del trabajo cuando ingresamos al trabajo parlamentario. Nosotros en el 2019 nos planteamos la hipótesis de si podíamos incorporar inteligencia artificial al trabajo parlamentario, y me parece que el trabajo que venimos realizando y la experiencia también que tienen algunos parlamentos en el mundo nos da la factibilidad de la aplicabilidad de la inteligencia artificial dentro del trabajo parlamentario, tanto para mejorar el trabajo dentro de nuestras cámaras, de nuestros parlamentos, como para mejorar la transparencia y la participación ciudadana hacia afuera, hacia la ciudadanía. Creo que la inteligencia artificial nos brinda herramientas y posibilidades que nos permiten ser mucho más eficientes en el trabajo del legislador. Nos facilita el trabajo del legislador, de la oficina, del despacho del legislador. Nosotros hicimos un abordaje muy inicial, somos muy jóvenes con la incorporación de inteligencia artificial. Recién el año pasado pudimos hacer algún aplicativo de inteligencia artificial en un entorno también que es un laboratorio de nuevas tecnologías, que lo que nos proponemos es empezar a desarrollar inteligencia artificial como una solución disruptiva dentro de las tecnologías disruptivas. Y ese trabajo que hicimos fue en base a las versiones taquigráficas, a las versiones de los oradores en el momento de la sesión. Y ese análisis de la versión taquigráfica, nosotros estamos buscando resultados que nos permitan ser más eficientes a la hora de diseñar políticas públicas. Y eso se puede realizar en la construcción de bases de datos y en la construcción de algoritmos de inteligencia artificial. Creo que las personas no tenemos la capacidad de analizar grandes bases de datos, y ahí entra un rol importante y juega un rol importante la inteligencia artificial como una herramienta que nos facilita y nos brinda ese acceso de análisis de política pública y de diseño de políticas públicas. Nosotros también además a eso lo sustentamos con herramientas que papers científicos, o sea, documentamos situaciones de otros parlamentos para poder también trabajar en herramientas, en versiones comparadas, y además, bueno, también trabajamos junto a Fotios en un análisis del estado de situación que nosotros estamos teniendo para que eso nos permita plantear una hoja de ruta a futuro. Yo le veo una gran oportunidad a la inteligencia artificial dentro del trabajo parlamentario y que va a servir para ser mucho más eficiente, mucho más eficaces, y estamos en ese proceso. Me parece que ese es el camino que nosotros tenemos que tomar y esas son las respuestas que tenemos que brindar, y en esa dinámica es que me parece que nosotros nos encontramos en este momento.
Thank you so much, Germán, for your opening considerations. Ludovic, would you like to share your comments on that? You're muted, Ludovic. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's small delay. Thanks a lot. In fact, we mainly are dealing with natural language processes application of AI in the European Parliament. That's the main train that we are currently following for the systems which are in production. So there is one big winner, which are conversational agents, or also called soft bots. So these ones have been the really big winners following the COVID-19 situation. So it has replaced the old frequently asked questions that were long pages with something which is a little bit more natural to exchange with. And based on some models that we acquired, not developed, but we acquired, and we've been in a position to set a number of soft bots dedicated to some really specific domains. So within the organization, within the European Parliament, or outside, to try to answer to these questions. The advantage of these soft bots is very often they rely to very specific closed words, and then you have the opportunity to bridge them with some external databases, so which you can retrieve information and provide them based on the question which is asked, and also it acts as a kind of branch to access different existing resources that you could link directly from the softbot through visual representations without having to ask any question. So that was really the first winner. The second one is activities related to semantic text analysis and document correspondence. So we published a lot of documents from the European archives online, more than 400,000 documents. And there has been an attempt to try to have a better understanding of what was contained inside these documents, but quite difficult to discover when you have to analyze such a corpus. So it was about document classification, auto-classification, extraction of topics from the documents we have. So that's another dimension in order to facilitate the manipulation of these documents. And in the same domain of natural language processing, there are some also long documents which are complex to read, or let's say fastidious because there's a lot of pages. So we developed also an automatic summarization of documents by which you can submit documents in any language and specify the percentage to which you would like to reduce it, and then you obtain a reduced version. So all these ones are in the domain of natural language processing. There's one which is a little bit more specific that was developed by the Director General for Translation, which is about job allocation. So when you have a lot of translators translating documents from a source language to a target language, it may be quite complex to address the jobs considering the workload they already have and the targets and the originating from the documents that may give a priority in order to translate or not. And there was an attempt to develop an AI system to ease the allocation of jobs to translators based on a certain number of constraints and learnings. So this is what is currently in production and what we use inside the Parliament.
Thank you so much, Ludovic, for your considerations. Edmundo, would you like to share your considerations as well on this topic?
Sim, aqui na Câmara dos Deputados, sim. Então, aqui na Câmara dos Deputados do Brasil, nós desenvolvemos alguns sistemas de IA buscando justamente reduzir o esforço das equipes técnicas que lidam diariamente com processos e informações legislativas. Dentre as aplicações da inteligência artificial na Câmara, A gente pode citar duas principais frentes. Uma que combina a IA com a visão computacional e outra que combina a IA com processamento de linguagem natural. Então, assim, diversas áreas de negócio, né? Justamente contactaram a área de tecnologia e inovação para que pudessem utilizar isso no dia a dia. Então, para exemplificar, na linha da visão computacional, a inteligência artificial foi utilizada para reconhecimento facial dos parlamentares, né, a partir das fotos institucionais e futuramente para identificação biométrica durante a atuação remota dos parlamentares. No campo do processamento de linguagem natural, nós identificamos, né, e desenvolvemos sistemas de inteligência artificial nas seguintes áreas, né, para correlacionar conteúdos do portal institucional, né, correlacionando, assim, propostas legislativas com as notícias, as enquetes, né, discursos, estudos e a própria legislação. Também para classificar as demandas de elaboração legislativa, né, conforme a especialidade dos consultores. Também para recuperar documentos legislativos similares, né, de acordo com essas demandas, e também para agrupar as emendas legislativas, né? Isso auxilia muito os consultores e parlamentares na produção de quadros sintéticos e comparativos. Também a gente tem atuado aplicado, né, a inteligência artificial na transcrição de áudio para texto. Isso apoia atividades dos taquígrafos, dos revisores e dos jornalistas. Por fim, a gente encara como aplicações futuras e que auxiliariam muito, né, os parlamentares e suas equipes, o tratamento de textos legislativos no sentido de resumir e traduzir para outros idiomas. Era isso que eu queria comentar. Obrigado.
Thank you, Edmundo, for your considerations. Ari, would you like to share your thoughts on this one as well?
Sure, and thank you, Luís, and thank you for the panel. I guess I'm a bit contrarian when it comes to artificial intelligence working with legislative data. I work with Xcential Corporation. We work with legislatures, including the House of Representatives. And what we like to focus on, I say, is real intelligence. There's really no substitute when you're working with a legislature for the historical background, the knowledge, the detailed understanding that they have. So when we talk about technologies that might be categorized as artificial intelligence, we start with things like Ludovic was mentioning natural language processing. But all of that natural language processing that we've put in comes from working very deeply with the experts who are the drafters to understand what their language processes are, because a generalized language model, you know, the ones that are used for analyzing Twitter or anything else nowadays on a big scale, really doesn't match what the experts who are in the legislatures that we work with are needing. The other thing that I would focus on is that the technologies that need to be brought to legislatures before, I would say, something like machine learning or other more advanced artificial intelligence are basic things like transparency, the ability to read documents, the ability to put out documents to the public in their original form. So that's not to say that some that work towards the future isn't valuable, but there's a lot of groundwork, I think, that needs to be done ahead of time. One point that I would make about automation, which isn't necessarily natural language, artificial intelligence, in our work with the House of Representatives, we've presented a document comparison system, working with the House Clerk's office. We've automated that process, but again, using the knowledge of legislators of what sections of a bill match other sections. So a lot of legislative information, knowledge went into creating that, but it's important to that system be automated. And the reason is when you're comparing two documents, there could be some judgment in what sections to match and what differences to show and how to highlight them. And when you have an automated system, it allows, say, both parties to understand that the process and reporting of these comparisons and the difference between, say, version 1 of the document and version 2 hasn't been politicized. So it's an interesting, I think, distinction to talk about the automation here. Giving over the job to the computer was actually a good thing, because then the politicians can say, okay, the outcome was not tweaked by the party in power, right? But that I would create the distinction between doing that in an automated way that follows a certain set of rules that were set up ahead of time, from an artificial intelligence system that really you can't probe and don't understand why it's making those choices. And that's where I would leave it.
Thank you so much, Ari, for your considerations. Fotios, would you like to close this round and share your comments?
Yeah, sure. Let me try to frame this a little bit. When talking about state of play of AI, you can possibly make a small distinction. First, what there's already in place, meaning what Parliament currently used, and for this, with Patricia Almeida from Brazil, we have run a screening of 9 parliaments. These were the ones that we could find. This was finalized a few months ago, and we found out that they used overall 36, a total number of systems that you could possibly classify as AI. And here I fully credit Ari, because we need a little bit to define what constitutes AI here. And we were also able, this is research that is pending publication, but we found out that, as Ludovic said, chatbots constitute a significant amount of these systems. Then you have text classification algorithms, pattern recognition, automatic translation, summarization, classic AI algorithms, speech to text, also NLP processing there. Next, and I would give also here credit to somebody that listens to us from Germany, John von Lucke. We did together with Zeppelin University in Friedrichshafen, Germany, we did develop, let's say, an experiment that we run. We let it run in the Greek Parliament and also in the Parliament of Argentina, as German Matthias said, to find out what people want. So not what it's already there, but what people would like to have as AI-based systems in their parliaments. And we did a full screening of 16 administrators and MPs in the Parliament of Argentina, and a similar number in Greece. And out of this screening, through a really interactive process, there came about a very rich data set that we are about to analyze. And the result of such assessments is to narrow down the incredible possibilities that AI technologies may offer to Parliament. So which one do you choose? You don't have definitely endless resources to test a lot of systems. So you need to narrow this down. And with such experiments, there is a possibility that you can, out of hundreds of possibilities, you can narrow it down to a top 5, 6, 8, 10, or whatever. And these possible deployment of AI, these can truly be then analyzed, maybe also implemented by pilots or in with demonstrators, so that the Parliament can truly find the solution that it really wants and makes the difference in its actual working processes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fotios. And actually, you gave me a window to bring my second question, and it will be directed to Ludovic. Ludovic, each one of you is leading an effort using, as Fotios said, different AI, different solutions that could be called artificial intelligence. I'm sorry. So, for instance, the European Parliament has released recently a dashboard in its legislative archives. Fotios is leading for years the Hellenic OCR team to digitalize old legislative documents. Edmundo is leading the Ulysses program in Brazil. Ari is leading the efforts of Xcential with the US House of Representatives. And Germain released recently their AI strategy for the Honorable House of Representatives. So my question is, and I wanted to deep dive here with you, why this is important for members of parliament and for staffers, let's say directors or secretary generals or other colleagues that are concerned about the core business of the legislature? Why should they care about if they are using artificial intelligence or not? Why this is beneficial for them to execute their mandate, to provide better information for members of parliament and for members of parliament to better exercise their mandates? How does these different solutions we are talking about improve their lives? Ludovic, would you like to start?
Yeah, with pleasure. I think I would address the question maybe with a different angle. I think that we need to show that AI enables them to work through three main dimensions. First one, that we need to understand the bias and subjectivity within the algorithm that we use. They also need to understand that whatever is said, and I fully agree with Ari, we have to maintain human autonomy in the decision when we are using AI systems. And the last one is that we have to integrate ethicists meaningfully inside the use of this system. So understanding bias and subjectivity, what does it mean? It means mainly that we need to ensure that the products we are providing with AI systems embedded or AI algorithms enables a safe use of these systems, and that it meets the standards which are set in our context in the applicable EU safety rules. That's the first point. So, for instance, requirements ensuring that AI systems are trained on datasets that are sufficiently broad and cover all relevant scenarios needed to avoid dangerous situations, so that they can trust the system that they will use by this fact of introducing these requirements to avoid bias. The second one is almost in the same line, meaning that we absolutely have to ensure that this AI system does not lead to outcomes entirely in prohibited discrimination, and that these requirements could entail in particular obligation to use data sets that are subsequently representative, especially to ensure that all relevant dimensions of gender, ethnicity, or possible grounds of prohibited discrimination are appropriately reflected in those data sets. And the last one is that we also have to ensure through requirements that privacy and personal data are adequately protected during the use of AI-enabled products and systems. So I think that once we bring this warranty, once we show that to these stakeholders, wherever they are, members or top managers or citizens, that these systems have been taken into account, these requirements about avoiding a dangerous situation, about having data sets which are representative and protecting personal data, that's the first step. The second one is about human autonomy. We make a huge difference between systems that are taking decisions by themselves or systems which are supporting a human-based decision. It's extremely different. Also in the regulations, there's a clear difference in between both of them. And there, I think that we should remain till a certain time, and we have to prove the opposite, that we have to remain to the capacity to decide by ourselves, meaning that in the end, the human should remain ultimately in control of AI. And that's really fundamental, to show them that in the end, they will still have the decision to make. And the last one was to ensure the conformity of products with ethical principles. And it has been suggested that AI ethicists could be embedded into films or development scenes to integrate this dimension on the various stages. So I think that if we ensure these three domains, bias, subjectivity, human autonomy, and ethicism, then we should gain the support from all stakeholders.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ludovic, for your response. I couldn't agree more with your considerations. Edmundo, would you like to comment on what Ludovic just said?
Sim. Fazendo coro com o que o Ludovic acaba de falar, os usuários, né, dos sistemas de inteligência artificial, eles têm responsabilidades, né? Eles precisam, por exemplo, entender que esses sistemas são dinâmicos, pois suas respostas evoluem com o tempo, a partir do feedback desses próprios usuários. Nesse sentido, entendo que os parlamentares e demais envolvidos na elaboração legislativa devem perceber essa responsabilidade, né? De forma que esses sistemas evoluam a partir do aprendizado de máquina. Por enquanto é isso. Obrigado.
Thank you, Edmundo, for your considerations as well. Fotios, would you like to share your comments?
Sure. Okay, let me start by saying the following. I do not know the answer to this question because this is highly specific for each person and maybe for each parliamentary organization. Each one has evolved over tradition, using traditions, with traditional employment schemes, and you have, let's say, at any given point, if you want to answer this, you have to go to the source, to these people, to ask them why they want to utilize AI or any other kind of tool. So it's the old question again about using machines or simply continue doing manual labor. This is why exactly these considerations we had in our mind when developing the exercise or the experiment I told you earlier about. Since we don't know what is the rationale, because such personal decisions or even leadership decisions in any given parliament, how to continue with AI or any other technology. This is why we went to the source and we developed this experiment through an interactive workshop to ask the people themselves, the administrators and MPs, to evaluate these technologies. And this is why these results are potentially, for any individual parliament, very useful, because it is the opinion of their own folk, of their own people. And of course, it makes no sense to get the Argentinian examples and utilize them, let's say, in Africa or in Europe or in somewhere in Asia, in an Asian parliament. That would make absolutely no sense. But for this specific workspace, the Parliament of Argentina, the Chamber of Deputies, or in the former case in the Greek Parliament, in the Hellenic Parliament in Athens, the specific results have indeed a lot of meaning when analyzed for the particular parliament. And you can narrow down the possibilities or the technologies that are relevant for this particular institution.
Thank you so much, Fotios, for your considerations. Germain, would you like to share your thoughts?
Es muy buena la pregunta. Nosotros, o a ver, en términos, creo que al trabajar con inteligencia artificial somos conscientes de que tenemos el riesgo de contener sesgos. Los sesgos se trasladan a los algoritmos y eso es una responsabilidad de nosotros, los humanos. Me parece que la inteligencia artificial es una gran herramienta que tenemos que aprender a utilizarla y, como decía Fotis, el cómo utilizarla y en qué ámbito va a variar según el país, la cultura y el parlamento. La inteligencia artificial nos ayuda en términos prácticos a ser muchos mejores, a poder trabajar siendo mucho más eficientes, poder generar beneficios para el legislador y también para la ciudadanía, que la ciudadanía vea un parlamento mucho más eficiente y que trabaje de cara a la ciudadanía, creo que nos beneficia a todo. Claramente también la inteligencia artificial no solo varía en diferentes parlamentos y en diferentes sociedades, varía en donde nosotros lo vamos a enfocar. Nosotros estamos trabajando en la digitalización de todos los documentos del 1854 a la fecha, que eso estaban actualmente en papel, y estamos transformándolo en formato digital y además extrayendo todo lo que es los textos, y ahí vamos a poder trabajar en ese análisis de texto, pero claramente ese análisis de texto va a variar del 1854 al 1900, o de 1900 a 1950, o del 2000 al 2022. Creo que se hablan temáticas y problemáticas que son diferentes para la época. El ejemplo más claro que nosotros ya pudimos descubrir es que en la Argentina en el 2018 y en el 2022 se habló de la interrupción voluntaria del embarazo, el aborto, y eso antes no se hablaba. Como puede ser la pandemia. Digo, podemos hacer un análisis de la pandemia y seguramente no van a aparecer indicios de que estamos hablando de la pandemia del 2000 hacia atrás. Aparecerán otro tipo de pandemia y otro tipo de interpretaciones. Me parece que la inteligencia artificial es una solución y es una herramienta para análisis de texto, y es una herramienta que nosotros tenemos que ir empezando a pulir en cada uno de los ámbitos, y que sea 100% funcional para el ejercicio y la práctica interna de la Cámara. Claramente también tenemos el factor humano, digo, la gestión del cambio en términos de procesos administrativos, en esos flujos de trabajo que muchas veces, no solo por ser innovadores o por ser si se quiere llegar primero con la tecnología, no es la solución siempre. Digo, una herramienta que sea tecnológica, una herramienta que tenga inteligencia artificial, muchas veces no es la solución que realmente un área administrativa o un área parlamentaria necesita. Me parece que el desafío es amoldarla, generar una inteligencia artificial que sea amigable y que dé un resultado que sea para mejorar y para ser mucho más eficiente. El ejemplo más claro me parece que nosotros estamos teniendo es que pudimos analizar las versiones taquigráficas, pero el resultado hay que empezar a encontrarlos en un factor muy político o muy social. Creo que ese es el encuadre, que la tecnología por sí sola no lo va a poder conseguir, y me parece que esa es la función que nosotros, o el desafío que nosotros tenemos que tomar como áreas de innovación o como áreas de incorporación de tecnología dentro de los parlamentos.
Thank you so much, Germain, for your considerations. Adi, I'd like to invite you to share your comments and close the second round. What are your thoughts about this?
Great. Well, thank you so much. I don't, on this topic, have much more to add than the previous panelists have already said. I would just emphasize some of the points that they've made, both Germán just now and Ludovic earlier, which is to say that artificial intelligence, in my view, really should always provide information, analysis, and recommendations to people. And people are ultimately the consumers of the processes that artificial intelligence provides. And that's whether policymakers are involved. So they're always making the final decision on policy, possibly with recommendations or analysis that's helped with artificial intelligence. Drafters, who are the experts I work with the most, are always making the decisions on the final structure and the final provisions of the law, again, possibly assisted by artificial intelligence. Just emphasizing what others have said before, which is that ultimately people really need to be in charge.
Thank you so much, Adi, for your considerations. We are almost reaching the half of time of our debate today, and I wanted to give a different direction now. We have many colleagues watching us here now, considering if they should use an artificial intelligence tool in their institution, or if they should start to draft an AI strategy. And my question goes towards that: what are the milestones a legislative institution has to achieve before considering an AI strategy, considering using artificial intelligence to solve their challenges? And Fotios, I'd like to ask you this first. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, of course. There's no better question to start with when starting thinking about introducing some new AI-based technology. Before saying more about this, let me say that AI might be behind some technologies that people already use in their daily lives. You might use Google Translate, for instance, which is AI driven, or Siri, or any other digital assistant. There's some serious AI-based technology behind this. So this is nothing that it's, let's say, it will be overnight there. It wouldn't exist before. There are a lot of such technologies in place, quite mature, some not, of course, that could enter the parliamentary workspace with, let's say, minimal threat to existing processes, threat in terms of this really disrupting those processes. But of course, the very nature of AI is disruptive. So it depending on what exactly process you want to automate, then you should also choose the right technology, the right AI-based technology to do so. Let me place here, let me end this line of thought by going back to your original question. What are the prerequisites? Where you start with? I would say the best way to start with is by having a really well thought data strategy. Every consideration regarding AI needs to start with data, because AI technology is only useful, or can be used to do anything, if it is being fed with actual parliamentary data. If you don't have any data in the proper form, validation, format, structure, and maybe standard, there's no point start with AI. What will you feed the algorithm with? Algorithms of artificial intelligence, whatever they are, be it, let's say, summarization algorithms, pattern recognition, or whatever other kind of technology, NLP, they rely on data to do anything. If you don't have trustworthy data or validated data, then maybe you should forget about it and start creating those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fotios, for your considerations. Ari, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I just agree again with Fotios. Data structures are really the key when you're looking at anything that you're going to be working with. What I'd also say is focus on the goals first. What is it that you're trying to achieve? And there are a lot of tools available, and some of those tools are changes in processes and changes in communication between people. And there's a common saying that if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I would make sure that when you're talking about artificial intelligence, you're not just excited about your new tool, that you're really looking at the problem that you're trying to solve and find the right tool. And sometimes that may be summarization or classification or something in the classical AI sphere. Sometimes it may be something entirely different. So really focus on your objective and your goals. Understand that from the perspective of the people who are going to be using the tools, and then come up with the tool and the appropriate experts to implement the tool.
Thank you so much, Ari. Germain, would you like to comment?
Sí, creo que lo que voy a aportar es nosotros, la experiencia. Nosotros quisimos incorporar como primera vez un hito de poder incorporar inteligencia artificial al trabajo de la Cámara, y nos dimos cuenta que necesitábamos los datos. Creo que ayer lo decía, el 70%, 80%, 90% de lo que es la incorporación de inteligencia artificial o el data science o el machine learning se basa en poder tener una base de datos rica, confiable y que sea funcional hacia el objetivo que uno quiere generar en ese algoritmo y en esa inteligencia artificial. Nosotros, al plantearnos la hipótesis de poder incorporar inteligencia artificial, nos dimos cuenta que no contábamos con las bases de datos y por eso volvimos a algo más esencial, que fue poder digitalizar esos documentos que eran en papel y poder generar la base de datos para tener la esperanza, y en ese trayecto estamos, de algún día poder procesar esa base de datos con inteligencia artificial. También afirmando lo que decían los expositores, yo creo en los planes, creo que poder hacer un abordaje de inteligencia artificial y de incorporar inteligencia artificial se basa en tener la capacidad de poder planificar, de poder tener una hoja de ruta. Me parece que Fotis, nosotros hicimos esa encuesta, ese trabajo y ese estudio que ellos vienen realizando, y eso también nos va a permitir plantear una hoja de ruta hacia el futuro y poder tener una estrategia de cómo incorporar la inteligencia artificial, porque no es solo el capricho o tener la iniciativa o quizás decirlo de manera, por una cuestión de moda, digo, por una cuestión de que es temporal decir que tenemos desarrollos de inteligencia artificial y es marketinera, es vendible, se genera una publicidad, sino que sea un resultado que sea eficiente y que sea funcional, y como bien decía Ari, que sea una herramienta para la toma de decisión de los legisladores, de la persona y también de la ciudadanía, digo, en todos esos escalafones y esas escalas. Pero me parece que los hitos de gestión es poder incorporar la inteligencia artificial, poder trabajar en una base de datos y poder tener un algoritmo que permita tomar decisiones con la responsabilidad de lo que eso conlleva. Me parece que en la anterior pregunta remarcábamos, me parece que ahí tenemos que volver a algo más elemental, que son las 3 leyes de Asimov, y creo que la inteligencia artificial está relacionada en ese sentido y tenemos que ser conscientes de que no va a reemplazar hasta el momento a los legisladores, sino que tiene que ser una herramienta para los legisladores.
Thank you so much, Gemma, for your considerations. Ludovic, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I can only agree with everything that has been said. Perfectly true. The first point is data, data. That's. I did mention data, did I? Yeah, that's the kernel of everything. Yeah, if you don't have good data to work, then forget everything, and you will spend most of the time preparing your data and making sure that they be ingested inside your system. And this opens the door of the second dimension. So one dimension is about data, and that's what you mentioned. The second one is about objectives, so what we want to reach. And obviously you want to reach something and you want to get a positive benefit from applying AI algorithm. But how to do that? And then you will need to recruit a new category of people that we could call AI algorithm engineers. These are the people who will know which kind of algorithm to use in which context. Many people think that AI started in 2016 with the defeat of Lee Sedol, who was, by the way, a 9-dan professional, and he was 18 times world champion against AlphaGo. And if you're not certain about the capacity of AlphaGo as an AI system in front of this Go player, please carefully look at the move 37 on game 2 and the end of game 3, and then we'll realize that the system played some steps that humans would never have played. Even all the best in the world would never have done that. So it's just to give you that since this time, this was taking the benefit from a turning point that happened in 2012. When a neural network was built by Hinton's team to win an international contest on computer vision. And this capacity to generate this neural network by itself has opened the door to what will be called one day artificial general intelligence. And since then, we have built a collection and libraries of algorithms. And now we are in a position to use this one. So now the problematics in AI is not to create an algorithm to manipulate your data. They are there, and very often they are public. and they are open source. You can use them, and that's what we did in the European Parliament. We used libraries of open source AI algorithm, but then you will need to know which algorithm you have to use in which context for which result. And in this point, you will a kind of bridge algorithm, because sometimes you will need several of them, one after the other in a pipeline approach to solve your problem, because your problems are still complex. So this is a category of people that you will need to consider. Don't think that standard software development will be in a position to develop AI systems as such, like that. You will need to recruit and integrate in your teams these specific people, these algorithm engineers who will know the algorithm, how to use them, and then will bridge these pipelines of algorithm to ensure that the data you will provide will, in the end, benefit to your stakeholders and will have a positive outcome.
Thank you so much, Ludovic, for your considerations. Edmundo, would you like to share your thoughts and close this round?
Sim, gostaria. Como já foi dito, as iniciativas de inteligência artificial devem estar alinhadas com os objetivos estratégicos definidos em cada casa legislativa. É importante ressaltar, para os que pretendem implantar uma estratégia inicial de inteligência artificial, que o tempo necessário para o desenvolvimento de soluções é bastante variável, em função dos diferentes requisitos de coleta e tratamento dos dados, bem como da necessidade de experimentação de diferentes hipóteses de modelagem e de eliminação de vieses. Obrigado.
Thank you, Edmundo, for your considerations. Well, I'll take what Ludovic and Fotios and many other of the colleagues just said and bring my fourth question. And I will direct to you, Edmundo. I mean, if I would summarize it in one phrase, it's all about data. I mean, as Ludovic just said, the algorithms are being publicly available in public libraries or are being developed by parliaments. But the challenge is the data and how to make the data governance within the legislative institutions. And I mean, I'd like to ask each one of you, how is your parliament dealing with this challenge? And what is your recommendation for colleagues structuring their data governance and the very first steps? Edmundo, would you like to start?
Sim. A iniciativa de definir uma política de governança de dados é uma iniciativa que envolve esforço, né, concentrado das várias áreas de negócio, né, dentro da Casa Legislativa. Uma vez que a responsabilidade pela coleta, atualização desses dados é distribuída, né, dentre as unidades da Casa. Então, primeiramente, é necessário, né, envolver todas as áreas para que essa responsabilidade fique clara. E na definição da política de governança de dados, é importante que fique claro o papel, né, de tratamento dos dados com relação à qualidade. O monitoramento dessa qualidade tem de ser feito de forma proativa, uma vez que esses dados, né, são a base, né, de todo o processo organizacional. No contexto da estratégia de inteligência artificial, a governança de dados favorece enormemente esses processos de inteligência artificial, uma vez que a governança de dados promove a disponibilização de dados confiáveis e de qualidade. Para garantir a conformidade com as normas de proteção de dados pessoais, a política de governança de dados deverá disciplinar o tratamento e uso de dados sensíveis, né, durante todo o ciclo de vida dos sistemas de inteligência artificial. Então, nesse contexto, É importante que os processos de inteligência artificial incorporem mecanismos de transparência e de imparcialidade ética, para que esses processos sejam auditáveis e estejam em conformidade com a política de governança de dados da organização. Uma estratégia de inteligência artificial integrada à governança de dados precisa considerar, por exemplo, o tratamento desses dados, especialmente aqueles dados sensíveis ou sigilosos. Além disso, regras claras devem ser definidas para o eventual compartilhamento desses dados com parceiras tecnológicas, sejam elas universidades ou empresas de inteligência artificial. Cabe lembrar que a implantação de uma política de governança de dados é bastante importante, né, porque gera maturidade na organização, né, enquanto tornam mais eficientes os processos de negócio que, né, necessitam desses dados. Bom, é isso que eu tinha que falar, né? A gente está, nesse momento, implantando, né, a nossa política de governança. Está em andamento um projeto. Já foram mapeados diversos processos de negócio e seus respectivos metadados, né? Relativos às bases utilizadas pelos sistemas de informação da casa. Né? E isso é um trabalho que pretende se firmar de forma contínua, uma vez que o tratamento, né, o monitoramento da qualidade dos dados é um dos processos centrais da governança de dados que está sendo implantada na Câmara dos Deputados. Obrigado.
Thank you, Edmundo, for your considerations. Fotios, would you like to share your comments?
Thank you. The question is about what we do in our own parliament, and I answered this beforehand as I said that we run this experiment with 15 colleagues to see what can we possibly choose from the available technologies and applications in order to what can we prioritize in our specific case. And indeed, we prioritized a set of applications. Now, these are our results that we are currently discussing internally, and ideally this discussion will reach our leadership, and some serious decisions are going to be made. The same, we think, at least, should be the case for every parliament. Of course, meaning that this should be developed possibly bottom up. Of course, a leadership can always say, well, let's do this and that, and show at some specific applications that it has possibly picked somewhere abroad in some conference, or through some other not so clear decision process or selection process. Of course, the leadership takes full responsibility of this, but we think that this should be an inclusive process. Hence, this experiment where the parliament itself points at the technologies and the applications that it should maybe prioritize. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fotios, for your considerations. Ari, I'd like to invite you to comment. I know you do not work in a parliament, you work at Xcential on the private sector, but maybe you can bring your experience from working with different parliaments in these questions and sharing what you have been seeing as the best practices.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so we work largely with different federal entities. as I mentioned before, we work a lot with the clerk's office in the House of Representatives. We work with the government publishing office in the United States, and we work with the Library of Congress. One of the things that I have noticed, and I think is very important in the United States at the federal level, and I would suggest that this is also going to be important for inside of a national legislature, but also between legislatures, is that we need a lot of coordination, and that kind of coordination has only started to happen in recent years. And what I mean by this is at every level, from the data level, which I know that Fotios is a big proponent of, getting the data to be in a standard format that everybody has agreed, so that when it's passed back and forth, because the data that's produced by the House of Representatives doesn't just stay there, goes to the Senate, becomes legislation for the country, gets quoted and cited in regulations, right? So the data is moving anyway, but the data formats don't necessarily or weren't necessarily being transmitted from institution to institution. So there's a lot of standardization that needs to happen, and then just communication. If you've built a system that does parsing of your documents to understand the amendatory language, somebody else in another branch of government doesn't have to rebuild it, or at least they can learn from what you've done, right? So I think there's a really key component in building these systems to communication between entities that work with each other, and then the next level would be between governments that have had similar experiences and share those. And that's oddly enough a position we find ourselves in as an outside consultant, where there may be institutional barriers or just practices between agencies. We have a contract with this agency and this one, and we say, you know what, you're asking us each to do something similar. If we use the same tool that we built for one in the other, it's more efficient across.
Thank you so much, Ari, for your considerations. Very insightful. Ludovic, would you like to share your comments on this?
Yeah, I can, again, I fully agree with what was mentioned before, and also what mentioned Ari. For me, in this consideration of how to structure the first steps, it's if I would like to be a little bit different than from the previous comments, is focusing on the change of paradigm. The first one is to move from discovery to implementation in AI. It's not more the time to discover anymore, to think that this is only the domain which is reserved for research laboratories. It's something which is much more open than that. I just have my my line manager coming back from a cycle of conferences in the United States. She is not IT skilled at all, but I can tell you that when she came back following the cycle of seminars, she fully understands what AI was, and she fully understand what the benefits can be for the Parliament. So you don't need to be an expert anymore, and you don't need to think that you have to discover that with research laboratories. There's many things that can be done, that can be used, and which are already available for your organization. Of course, as we mentioned before, if we also have to move from expertise to data preparation and data analysis. I think everybody agrees on that. This is not a question of having experts coming to your organization from an outside world that will start to tell you how to work. It's more with the support that can be external, in this case, with the support to better understand your data, because you will all start from there, and to make sure that you can valorize your data through different processes you will apply having AI systems. So two small things in addition of that, also to change this paradigm that we had in the past. Don't consider AI as being a marketing product. It's not a marketing of products at all. It's just a tailoring approach or a building approach by which you will put together a certain number of algorithms in order to obtain a result. So it's not a marketing tool. It's not because you put on a system that you are doing AI that would be cool, will be fancy, used by everybody, and introduce a revolution in your domain. Absolutely not at all. That's also a project approach. It will be tailor-made for your own organization on your data, how they are structured, and how you can benefit from them. And the last point is to accept limited rationality as the best solution, considering the constraints to obtain it. It will not give the absolute answer, right? You can still have a dream asking a machine what will be the future of the world, and you may expect to have 42 as an answer. Fair enough, but that's not what we are working with. We have to accept limited rationality. Today, we have to accept that the system will give us the best answer that the system is able to provide, and then that the human being will have to analyze and put in perspective based on other information, other knowledge, and other level of human expertise in order to decide which will be the way to use these data and how we can benefit from these ones.
Thank you so much, Ludovic. Germain, I'd like to invite you to share your comments and close this round.
Nosotros en términos de datos tenemos una página que se llama Datos Abiertos, que brindamos todos los datos que vamos generando del trabajo de la Cámara. Claramente estamos en la transición en que los datos que actualmente y esos datasets, estas bases de datos que están publicadas, pertenecen a áreas específicas que trabajan la temática y actualmente esos datos y esos datasets se van actualizando de forma manual. Estamos en el proceso de poder incorporar y poder generar scripts que sean automáticos, que se generen las queries, las solicitudes y validar esas solicitudes con las áreas y que esta información sea publicada de forma automática. También digo, reforzar la cuestión de que esos datos que nosotros estamos generando son absolutamente públicos. Digo, el trabajo que se genera dentro de la Cámara es de saberes públicos, es totalmente abierto, solo que nosotros tenemos que generar esas bases de datos que sean de alguna forma interoperables y que estén a la vista no solo del trabajo parlamentario, sino que a la vista de la sociedad. En ese camino estamos nosotros enfocados. También estamos generando alianzas para poder trabajar esas bases de datos y poder enriquecer esa base de datos con datos que seguramente ya contamos con dentro del trabajo legislativo y quizás no lo hemos incorporado a esa base de datos por desconocimiento o quizás porque no le hemos encontrado alguna, quizás alguna utilidad, ¿no? Claramente la cuestión de los datos, nosotros trabajamos con un equipo multidisciplinario. Me parece que para poder analizar los datos y para poder generar esa base de datos tenés que trabajar con equipos multidisciplinarios de todas las experiencias, de que tengan objetivos diferentes, porque eso te va a enriquecer esos datos que son crudos, que son un montón, pero que el resultado y el análisis uno lo tiene que empezar a de alguna forma a interrelacionar con las diferentes áreas y con las diferentes circunstancias que uno le puede tomar a esa tecnología. Nosotros estamos en ese camino. Creo que el poder generar bases de datos relacionadas o no relacionadas, poder generar grandes bases de datos, volúmenes de información, sirven para poder transparentar el trabajo parlamentario y para, de cara a la sociedad, poder tomar nuevas políticas públicas y esas políticas públicas que sean realmente, como decía al principio, mucho más eficientes y mucho más eficaces. Y me parece que ese es el sentido de por qué tenemos que generar bases de datos nosotros, que después esa base de datos la vamos a poder procesar con inteligencia artificial.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Germain, for your considerations. I'm heading towards the final question of today's debate, moving a little bit away from the current discussion and trying to make an exercise here to look towards the future, not in 2023 or 24, but in the middle to the long-term future of parliaments. And my question is, I'd like to invite Ari to ask first, what do you envision for parliaments using different artificial intelligence tools in the future? And how do you think this will reshape how citizens engage with these democratic institutions? This is a question I had drafted before the beginning of the pandemic, but on Monday, Germain was there. We had a panel about participation tools, and this question of how to use artificial intelligence to enhance participation came up in different moments. So I think this is a very this is a question that is interdisciplinary, not only impacting the AI strategy, but different dimensions of the legislative institution. So Ari, what would you like to see in parliaments using in the next decade or in the coming decades, and how would this reshape the institution and how citizens engage with it?
Thank you, Luis. That's a very tough question. And I think thinking far in the future, some of the things that I would like to see as an engaged citizen that don't really exist now or hard, I think, on most any parliamentary website, is to know of the thousands of pages of text and lots of bills and documents. What's actually moving? How is the parliament actually working? So in our system, in the newspapers, we may know about one bill that is being processed, while there are hundreds of other bills somewhere in some committees somehow, and you have to be an expert on each area, on patent law or whatever, to track your area's bill. So I'd like to be able to go myself and say, what is the legislature doing right now, and what's likely to come out of that work, right? Some of that is artificial intelligence, some of that is experts summarizing that in a way that's more meaningful. But I think I'd like to have some sense of the parliament's work as it's happening. Related to that is more work in the summarization field. Again, in our parliament and in many others in Congress, we have people who are doing summarization, and that's never going to be replaced. But I think some artificial intelligence systems can help summarize both the legislation itself, but also the legislative processes. You know, you had a hearing today, and what went on in this hearing that's relevant to me. Two other areas I'd highlight. One is the potential impacts on society of certain bills. Again, this is something that analysts are doing, that journalists are working on, but some kinds of systems that might look at potential legislation and say, okay, here are the words on the page. What might this do to society, to our economy? And then the last, speaking of the economy, is a better way to identify and process budgets. Again, this could be an artificial intelligence solution. In our system, it's currently a data problem. Our budgets are written in plain text with hundreds and hundreds of pages with a bunch of numbers in them, where much of the rest of the world is working with spreadsheets, right? So translation between hundreds of pages of legislative text that has appropriations into spreadsheets is an unsolved problem, at least here. And I'd like to see more work towards that.
Thank you so much, Ari, for your answer. I'd like to invite Edmundo to comment on that.
Bem, para que a inteligência artificial possa ser utilizada intensivamente no contexto legislativo, as tecnologias de inteligência artificial deveriam evoluir em dois quesitos. O primeiro é o entendimento da linguagem natural. E o segundo é a explicação das respostas apresentadas pelos sistemas de inteligência artificial. O Ari acabou de citar, né, um dos desafios do futuro, que é resumir textos legislativos. Então, como a inteligência artificial poderá ser capaz de resumir de forma adequada, né, os textos disponíveis, né? Muitos deles são muito longos e essa capacidade é muito importante. Então, isso realmente exige a questão do entendimento da linguagem natural, né, que é uma das frentes da inteligência artificial em franco desenvolvimento. A inteligência artificial, em termos de futuro, poderá evoluir a ponto de reduzir substancialmente a distância entre cidadãos e parlamentares. Por exemplo, podemos sonhar com uma solução que permita que os parlamentares acompanhem de forma sintética as opiniões dos cidadãos a respeito das matérias legislativas, né? E da mesma forma, os cidadãos possam entender, né, qual é a posição do parlamentar a respeito, né, desses questionamentos manifestados pelos próprios cidadãos. Podemos, então, imaginar uma série de aplicações futuras, né, que dependem dessa questão do desenvolvimento do entendimento da linguagem natural, como, por exemplo, sugestão de redação de textos legislativos que estão sendo elaborados, verificação das regras regimentais, identificação de erros materiais em textos legislativos, né? Inclusive localizar de forma automática ou com apoio da inteligência artificial propostas legislativas semelhantes ou até mesmo conflitantes, né? Um outro exemplo de aplicação futura seria a consolidação de leis, né, que tratem de temas fortemente correlacionados. É isso, são muitos desafios ainda, né, para o desenvolvimento da IA, mas eu creio que esses dois pontos são os principais. Obrigado.
Obrigado. Thank you, Edmundo, for your considerations. I apologize. I'm listening to the floor audio, so thank you for your considerations. Ludovic, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is a dream moment, so we can dream whatever we want. If I would identify three trends to advance in AI for parliaments, I would consider first forward planning, the second establishing legislative proposals, and the third one the evaluation of legislation in practice. So what does it mean? The first one, forward planning and agenda setting. It's about defining goals, taking into account future circumstances when establishing political priorities to maximize the impact on the society. And one of the domains is foresight. And within foresight, you have the challenge to identify mega trends and supporting high-level planning. And when we are working, such as the European Parliament, to draft legislation for all the member states, trust me, it's a pretty hard task to define the foresight and to support the activities of the members to foresee what the future will be and to ensure that what they will work on is really critical for this for the future and to this mega trend identification. The second one is establishing legislative proposals. So this is the consultation and exploratory phase on pre-impact assessment to define a draft proposed law. And there's one domain which is quite interesting, which is future-proof legislation. It's a quite trendy domain in AI, but also in law. The purpose is to prolong the longevity and effectiveness of legislation, to take into account the interests of future generation, and to promote legislative and regulatory flexibility and innovation. So domains on which it's used are, for example, experimental law or future-proof impact assessments, which are two of these domains. And the last one, evaluation of legislation in practice, is related to post-impact assessments to verify if the adopted legislation has reached its objectives. And this is related to data analysis techniques to evaluate how far objectives are achieved. So if you enable me to dream AI use in the parliaments, then I would choose these three domains: forward planning, legislative proposal, and the evaluation of the legislation in practice.
Thank you so much, Ludovic, for your considerations. Germain, would you like to comment?
Es muy buena pregunta. Yo creo que nosotros estamos viviendo una transformación cultural, me parece, y que actualmente la tecnología nos ayuda cuando vamos a las redes sociales, cuando elegimos nuestro momento de ocio, cuando vamos a Netflix. Creo que la inteligencia artificial y los algoritmos hoy nos ayudan en todos nuestros ámbitos a la hora de ir a realizar una compra, a la hora de pasear, de hacer un viaje. Creo que la tecnología hoy es una herramienta que nos ayuda todo el tiempo. Eso creo que lo tenemos que traer a nuestros parlamentos. Eso es clave, que la tecnología y la inteligencia artificial va a cambiar la relación del Parlamento con la ciudadanía. Ahí A mí me gusta siempre contar, me parece el relato que nosotros creamos un laboratorio, procesamos eso de poder generar inteligencia artificial por primera vez, estamos trabajando en las bases de datos y en la digitalización, pero me parece que el puntapié final, quizás, de cómo podemos utilizar la tecnología realmente es poder, voy a dar un ejemplo muy claro que siempre lo utilizo, que es poder generar un chatbot. Digo, hoy actualmente toda la ciudadanía cuenta con un celular y tiene la capacidad de poder escribir a través de un WhatsApp, a través de un Telegram, Facebook, Instagram y cualquier servicio de mensajería, y me parece que toda la información que ya seguramente todos los parlamentos, y en el caso nuestro, el Parlamento de Argentina, contamos con toda la información publicada en una web que está al acceso de la ciudadanía, pero seguramente es difícil de encontrar, porque no todos los ciudadanos conocen el trabajo parlamentario, conocen todo lo que ese trabajo que se realiza a puertas adentro. Y me parece que la inteligencia artificial y la tecnología lo que nos permite es abrir el Parlamento hacia la ciudadanía. Y la herramienta y el ejemplo más claro es poder contar con un chatbot que le pregunte cuáles son sus legisladores, cuáles son sus representantes, en qué está trabajando su legislador, a quién votó, le pueda decir o mandar algún mensaje, alguna sugerencia, en el caso, como bien contábamos hace 2 días, en poder tener un portal de co-construcción de leyes abiertas, un portal de que uno pueda darle sugerencias, pueda votar si se quiere algunas cuestiones relacionadas a qué temáticas, y hasta en el análisis de la inteligencia artificial poder saber en qué está hablando el Parlamento, en qué temas se está trabajando básicamente, no solo en el trabajo de comisiones, sino que poder contar con un análisis, con un gráfico, y que seguramente eso lo pueda tener a su alcance a través de un teléfono móvil que hoy actualmente es la forma que tenemos todos de vincularlo. Por eso hacía hincapié en que estamos siendo testigos de una transformación cultural, y me parece que, como bien decía la otra vuelta, nosotros trabajamos en los parlamentos que tienen mucha historia, que son parlamentos de mucho recorrido y vienen funcionando muy bien con esta dinámica, y la incorporación de tecnología viene a ayudarlos, y me parece que tenemos que ser responsables a la hora de incorporar tecnología, pero claramente es la tecnología el camino del futuro, y no solo que viene a cambiar las relaciones, sino que creo que ya no las cambió a las relaciones entre los parlamentos, entre los legisladores y entre la ciudadanía.
Thank you so much, Germain, for your considerations. Fotios, would you like to share your thoughts and close this last round?
Yes, for sure. I will stick to my previous mindset, and I would say that if one wants to find out how to strengthen the public engagement and bringing the citizens and civil society closer to the parliament, one needs to ask this question both to the parliamentarians and the parliament and to the citizens themselves. So probably some sort of similar experiments that we run in the parliament should be also run with representatives from the civil society. Everything I think that my colleague said is correct to a certain extent, and to a certain degree it applies to every single setup. Of course, every country is different, and every democratic tradition in a country and level of democratic maturity is different. So obviously the solution that to bring citizens closer to the parliament is heavily bespoke to the particular system. Therefore, I believe that whatever that if one needs to do this link and find the proper technology and the proper solution to strengthen the bonds between citizens and the parliament with AI, this screening needs to be there first. Regarding possibilities, they're endless, of course. You can use chatbots for really digitally literate people to have an interaction with some digital agent and find their way through parliamentary information and data. You can use summarization, or you can use graphical visualizations, graphical representation of law to make people understand legislation. So since everything, that's what we found out through our research, a great deal of solutions goes towards visualizing information. So I suppose a very strong instrument is to work with data, crunch them through AI, and then visualize information so that it gets better understandable by people out there. And this is just only a very minor subset of possibilities that one has at his or her disposal.
Thank you so much, Fotios, for your final considerations. We covered all the questions I had drafted for our conversation today. I'd like to thank all of you. It's been an honor to moderate this debate with you. I'm seeing here in the comments the colleagues saying they found it very insightful as well. Before we end, I'd like to yield the floor back to each one of you very briefly to say any final thoughts you might have. Alphabetically, I'll start with you. Ari, would you like to share any final thoughts?
Thank you. Just that I've learned much more than I think I've provided today. The panelists, as always, Luis, you bring together an amazing group of people. The people I hadn't heard before, very insightful. And then the people I've heard before, each time I get a new perspective from them. So I just thank you for bringing this panel together.
Thank you so much, Ari. Edmundo, would you like to say any final thoughts?
Gostaria de agradecer, né? Essa interação foi muito produtiva, também aprendi bastante. Só um esclarecimento, né, com relação à distinção entre processamento de linguagem natural e entendimento da linguagem natural, né, que são frentes distintas e que a gente espera que essa parte do entendimento da linguagem natural se desenvolva, né, a ponto de podermos, né, discutirmos aqui soluções bem mais avançadas, com resultados bem mais interessantes do que os que vemos atualmente, né? Então, assim, a gente espera que a pesquisa acadêmica trabalhe muito nessa questão para que a gente possa aplicar no contexto legislativo e de forma mais intensiva, né? Uma vez que hoje muito do trabalho se beneficia, né, pouco ainda desses resultados que a gente obtém pelas técnicas atuais. Obrigado a todos. Até a próxima.
Thank you, Edmundo, for your final thoughts. Fotios, would you like to share any final thoughts as well?
Thanking you, all our speakers, and of course the participants in this open discussion. I would like to say that this is a rapidly evolving topic. This covers very well the state of play today in this area. I suppose it might very well be that in 6 months from now, we might have a slightly different or completely different approach to this. Therefore, such deliberations are very important. And we are looking forward to further debates organized by you, Luis, on this same topic.
Thank you so much, Fotios. Germán, would you like to share any final thoughts?
Bueno, el agradecimiento a este panel. La verdad es que he aprendido mucho de todas las experiencias. Celebro estos espacios, que tengamos estos lugares de poder compartir las experiencias, las opiniones, y para poder nosotros enriquecernos en el trabajo. Y redoblo los saludos a vos, Luis, por permitirnos estos espacios. Me parece que es súper interesante que podamos poder compartir, y la verdad que te felicito por todo el trabajo que venís realizando, y obviamente a disposición para todas las sugerencias, dudas y todo lo que podamos trabajar en conjunto a futuro, a total disposición. Y Luis, te vuelvo a felicitar, y el agradecimiento por invitarme a participar.
Muchas gracias, Germán. Thank you for your participation today. Ludovic, any final thoughts on this panel?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Luís, for this opportunity, and also all the other panelists. It was a great exchange, and I also learned a lot of things through what was said. If I would have just one last thought, is to the one who are listening to us or will review this session later on. Please do not consider that AI is a magic tool that will solve all your problems. Let's not reproduce a history. Let's not reproduce a point that leads to have some AI winters in the past, where people thought that this was the end and AI was reached a certain level that it will solve all the problems we have in the world. It will answer to all the questions. It's not about that at all. We have some inefficient tools, but we have to use them on the right context with the right data to obtain a result that will be framed, and we have to take carefully and to analyze before we use. So let's make use of this limited rationality. Don't think that we arrived at the end of all the problem management that we have and having nice solutions to solve all of them. That's not the case at all. Let's be realistic on that. Thank you very much. It was really an honor to participate in this panel, Luís. And as usual, thanks a lot for the moderation and the work from the Deputados.